Hi there, and welcome to the very first episode of the Humans and AI podcast. This is the podcast where we dive into the real-life stories of the top leaders and entrepreneurs within the artificial intelligence, high-performance computing and data center space, the people who truly are at the top of their game. We have honest and authentic conversations with our guests. We'll chat about their career journeys, the highs and the lows, and even the lessons they've learned from their mistakes, and the victories they've celebrated along the way. It's all about sharing their experiences and knowledge and how they see the future of the space they're in. So if you're looking for practical advice from people who've walked the same path, or just a little inspiration, you're in the right place. We'll be dropping new episodes on Thursday at 12, so make sure you stay tuned. Well, thanks for coming in today. Really appreciate it, Pete. So how are you doing?
I'm really good. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I'm looking forward to what's in store.
Yeah, you and me both. We'll find out together. So, well, look, before we really kick into things, why don't you just do a bit introduction to who you are,
Sure.
what you're doing, your role, and obviously a little bit about the business you're working in.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Pete Hill. You know me already, but for the benefit of the
audience.
One of the co-founders of CUDO.
Yep.
And my role within CUDO is kind of more towards the commercial side. So VP of Sales is the official title, but I can guarantee you it's far wider and broader than that. So I get involved in the kind of investment side of the business, the strategy, a little bit of product, a little bit of marketing. It's a startup at the end of the day, right? So we get involved in everything.
Roll up your sleeves.
And CUDO itself, what we're building a distributed cloud computing marketplace. That's the face of it, if you like. So it's a whole computing ecosystem.
Yep.
We have focused very much on the kind of GPU computing as well, GPU accelerated workloads. So AI is, of course, in huge demand at the moment, particularly kind of generative AI. But not to forget, there are other GPU intensive workloads as well, video rendering, VFX it's called, seismic imaging, data modeling, all these kind of things. Right? It needs a lot of kind of parallel computing. It's just that AI is kind of where that
it's what everyone's talking about, isn't it? It's the big thing.
Exactly. So it's I mentioned at the beginning it's distributed. So just for everyone's benefit, that's where we are aggregating lots of kind of third party service provider environments from around the world. Ones with lots of GPUs.
Yep.
And our software kind of pulls all of that together, so it kind of federates that compute and makes it available. So consumers coming in have a very easy experience. Well, we like to think it's a very kind of easy experience of building virtual machines or building bare metal environments, so full physical server environments.
Yep.
With as few clicks as possible, which is where we've kind of been aiming for. With very significant cost savings when you compare that to kind of the hyperscale platforms, and that's because we have really channeled in on that kind of that niche, if you like. But I think the proudest thing for myself and a lot of people in the business is we got into this because we wanted to make a more sustainable cloud computing model. So every single one of those GPUs in our marketplace at the moment is coming from 100% renewable energy powered facilities.
Amazing. Yeah, and not many people can actually say that either, can they?
Yeah, so that's a challenge in itself, right? It's the way that the market is absolutely evolving, right? So most of these kind of high performance computing ready data centers over the last kind of 5-6 years are being powered by sustainable energy, right? Whether that's 100% renewable or high percentage renewable and some nuclear, and the reason for that is because renewable energy is now cheaper than fossil fuel energy. And a lot of these kind of newer workloads that have sprung up, over the last few years, they don't necessarily have the same latency requirement as kind of more traditional stuff that we've been dealing with in the past. And therefore, the data center doesn't have to be slap bang in the middle of the financial district of a city where you can't go and build a big solar array or have a hydro dam or something along those lines. So it's evolving, which is a really good thing for the planet. But it's also an essential thing because these servers, these AI servers are extremely hungry. We're not talking about a kind of typical server now,
Yeah, of course. It is, and it's funny though because obviously, we've seen on the news this week. I think we spoke about it the other day. obviously there's a big thing around obviously using natural, fuel sources at the moment. Obviously the tech industry with AI is, causing a bit of a storm because it is becoming, they're not meeting their sustainability goals as a rule. And obviously it's because the demand for AI. So these big data centers, all the different servers, everything they need, the amount of power consumption. And obviously a lot of companies are falling behind that. Some aren't, and you talked about some of the things they're doing with renewables. What are you guys doing particularly? Because you touched on it before as well. Have you got other things that you're doing as well, or is it very much following that sort of route within this?
Yeah, I mean, everything we're doing is very, very focused on growing that kind of computing infrastructure for customers, right? So right now that looks like a GPU as a service platform. If you need GPUs, come to us. You can rent them out. You can build as environments as big as we can offer effectively, either through the marketplace or we have these conversations with customers and we can especially build them for for those customers, or kind of broker a solution with partners that we know that have that capacity. Because there's a lot of demand, and there's supply on the hardware is very short as well, a bit like the kind of electrical and data center infrastructure and the shortages of supply we're seeing out there. So it's a bit of kind of a grab what you can at the second for a lot of those companies out there that are scaling really, really, really quickly because they've hit that flywheel of demand from customers just continually needing to expand. So whilst a lot of the new stuff is being built, like I said, in these renewable zones, I'm going to call it, take Sweden, Norway, the Nordics, for example, there's an abundance of hydroelectricity, there's an excess of hydroelectricity as well. So with that comes a much lower cost point as well. So naturally, there are a lot of data center builders that are going into these kind of zones around the world, and with an eye on this, but. Then let's take a kind of look at the US, right? And the US is building, but there is the growth there is new technologies usually take off about a year or two in the US before the rest of the world, mainly because a lot of that kind of innovation comes out of Silicon Valley to begin with, a bit more kind of risk taken, and technologically they tend to take that kind of lead across the market. But there's some stats out there saying they're going to run out of power, from a kind of what's available via the grid infrastructure. They're going to run out of power by the end of this year, right? So
that's the concern, isn't it?
Yeah. So kind of where do you go? So you've got these companies, OpenAI have said that they're $100 billion there with Microsoft. They're investing into the infrastructure. And we're not talking about the hardware. We're talking about the data centers and the power source to power those data centers, right? So $100 billion. BlackRock and is it Microsoft?
Microsoft
30 billion, right?
Crazy.
The largest kind of fund of its kind that come out to build out this kind of infrastructure as well, and huge numbers. And you put it in comparison, right? So anyone that's listening to this that's within the UK, right? Our new government's come in and just said there's a 22 billion shortfall, and we're going to have to cut everyone's pension, right? You just think that feels so small,
so insignificant in comparison, isn't it? It's mad. We're all in uproar.
Anyway, I don't want to digress too much on that.
We could talk about that all day. To be fair, I know I could, but we'll do that in the pub. But I mean, it is huge, and the sustainability issues. I don't think it's going to be something we're talking about again in a year's time and in 5 years' time. It's going to be ongoing, isn't it? I mean, obviously, looking at you guys and what you're doing, and actually going back even further before you even started CUDO, you've been in IT sales now for quite a few years. I think you started, MSP down in Southampton, and you've been in around the acquisition scene probably that whole time, isn't it? Because you actually stayed in the one company and it just grew. Is that seeing that movement and seeing all those acquisitions? Is that what sort of started planting the seed in your brain about becoming a co-founder?
I guess so. Look, my journey certainly wasn't mapped out from the beginning. I didn't, when I came out of university in 2008, I didn't sit down there and think, right, over the next 16 years, I want to go through this acquisition and this kind of merger and then found a company. And, maybe some people do have that mapped out, but I didn't. So, it's just been a natural progression. I'm extremely grateful for it because I've learned a lot throughout. Made a lot of mistakes throughout as well, but we'll come back to those. But you've got to learn from them. But it's been interesting. So I left university. I joined a very small kind of IT company. It was in Bournemouth rather than Southampton. And I went in as a kind of sales junior, sales executive, you know, I want to call it as a title, doesn't matter. I was fresh into it, right? And I can remember my first week, you know, was because this was a small team. Nobody had time for training or anything, right? There wasn't processes in place. And it was, we've given you a second screen. Oh, brilliant. Okay. You know, it's quite uncommon back then to have two screens. Yeah. So what's the second screen for? It's like, so when you're on the phone, if you don't know what the acronym is someone has given you, just put it in Wikipedia.
Brilliant. So, learning on the fly.
So that was my journey into IT. Right? And then, you know, from there, that business grew, was growing at a decent rate. And we moved into a new office that was in Bournemouth again. And, you know, suddenly we had a view. We weren't in a basement. It wasn't leaking. And, you know, the team was starting to grow. And we kind of looked at it and thought, you know, what we were selling, which was essentially co-location, data center space. You know, we were renting out the physical space within the data center and connectivity. So all of the, you know, fiber connectivity between the data centers that are on our network. And we had about 35, 40, something like that on our network. So that's kind of what we're selling. We're looking at thinking, you know, actually this is a channel model business. You know, there's going to be, because, you know, you're going to have service providers that are going to put the servers inside those racks that we're renting, and you're going to have service providers that are managing the customers that are on those servers. So this is a reseller business, or is a, you know, a channel business. So we pivoted to more of a channel focus, started, you know, looking at the managed service providers, the value-added resellers. And within about a year, about 90% of our revenue was actually coming from channel.
And you became the partner manager.
And I became the partner manager within that. And again, you know, it was kind of learn on the job type thing. But, you know, we built up that network really quickly. And it kind of progressed from there. And then, that business scaled. And 2016 it was sold. But before it was sold, way back in 2011, this idea came up because we were seeing all of these cloud service providers who became our main customers. They're all expanding their server environments, which was great for us. But their underutilization on their servers was increasing as well, because in peak hours, you know, all of the companies they were selling to, most of them were kind of domestic, you know, customers. When they're emailing in the day and using all of the kind of services that were coming from these servers, it'd be really, really busy. But overnight, there'd be just massive amount of underutilization.
Oh, wow.
But we're selling that, our customer, but that cloud service provider, electricity and footprint 24/7. So they're paying 24/7 to us, but they're only earning 8 to 12 hours a day, maybe, if you kind of look at it that way.
So and that's where it came from. That was the idea.
Yeah. So it's like, how can we build something that's elastic that can fill that space? That was kind of where the idea came from. And we did a kind of proof of concept, and it kind of worked. But, you know, 2011 was the time where AWS was just taking off, you know, in a serious way. I think they were releasing a feature every 10 minutes or half an hour. That was their commitment to the market or something like that. So, you know, unless you've got 10,000 engineers, it's very hard to keep up with. And Azure hadn't been launched yet, and Google Cloud hadn't been launched yet. So this was the beginning of the kind of cloud.
And the Hyper-Vs and that kind of stuff, really, wasn't it?
Absolutely. So, you know, so we kind of went, right, it's not the right time. We'll revisit that when it is. And then that just kind of escalated, really, because, you know, then over the next few years, and you know, certainly until we sold the business in 2016, those big hyperscale clouds, where they were clouds at the time, but they became hyperscale clouds, were winning most of the market share from these cloud service providers. So now they've got these big environments in place, which are heavily underutilized in non-peak hours, but they're also getting heavily underutilized in peak hours. And so these service providers started, you know, better the devil you know, I guess, and, you know, can't beat them, join them type attitude, and selling services within AWS. And
we just saw all their data centers being sold, didn't we? I mean, I just saw it when I was recruiting for them. You know, all of my main clients were just getting rid of all their assets and just getting rid of the data centers. And I wouldn't have expected and predicted to do sort of full circle, really, like we have done now.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's crazy. Absolutely right. You know, we went from selling 10 racks to customers to 1 rack to customers to a quarter of a rack, and you're thinking, you know, it's a numbered game, but as you said, it's gone full circle because now now you've got single tenants that are not hyperscalers that require entire data centers because they need so much computing power for their AI. So we'll come back onto that. But yeah, so the company was sold 2016. It was part of an M&A, so merger and acquisition. And it merged with with a managed service provider that was based up in London, and another company that was based over in Reading. So that became the new branded company. I stayed there for about a year. Our founder of the previous company, which was C4L, by the way. So the founder of the previous company is the founder here, the CEO, Matt Hawkins, of CUDO, and we sat down and went, what next? Let's go back to that idea, and actually, we can see the way that the data center market is going, and carbon taxes are coming in, and climate is our responsibility to do something if we're building something from the ground up. So let's make it sustainable as well, and that really was the kind of birth of CUDO.
GPU sort of straight from the beginning, and then it was sort of out of route, or
the actual original vision was to create. So it was all about using that unused computing power, right? So that's kind of where that idea came from. So the original vision of CUDO was really to create a platform where anyone could become a supplier. So, be it a gaming PC, a mobile phone, an electric vehicle, a smart fridge, maybe it's a bit optimistic, but, a data center, so it would still have the ability of service providers because they have a lot of computing power. And then that gives a customer choice there. So the customer coming through can say, I need this to run in the data center because of the security, the bandwidth, whatever is the requirement there. Or it could be a student that's doing a small animation for their coursework and said, well, I don't need any of that. I just need it as low cost as possible. And if it runs on somebody's, gaming rig in their bedroom, it doesn't matter to them, right? There's no copyright infringement or issue or anything like that if there was a kind of security breach. So that was the original vision. And there are absolutely different types of workloads out there for, those different types of environments. And we built a proof of concept application that was a desktop application, essentially, which evolved over time, but it started off as a desktop application whereby you could press a start button and it would use your spare CPU and GPU if you had them cycles to carry out various different workloads. And we built this engine into that software where if a more profitable workload came along based on the specification of your machine, then it would auto switch. So you're always guaranteed to get the most profitable one in the queue that's available for that machine. And that actually grew to, we reached about just short of about 1 million user accounts over the first kind of 2.5 years or so of that product being out. So the workloads that we were using were actually mining workloads, so crypto mining workloads. And the reason we did that, because this is a proof of concept, we wanted to make sure that there was actually demand for people downloading an application like this and running it on their computing power. Is because the crypto mining workloads are 24/7, right? So we didn't have to go and find a customer, so we could focus purely on, how we can generate revenue essentially for the users. So it generated about $50 million in total over that time. But it was never going to be a kind of sustainable long-term product in the sense that the crypto markets are obviously volatile. So you have, you've got to kind of bring that into it, but also the way those workloads operate, it's called, I don't want to go too technical here, but it's called kind of proof of work, right? It's a consensus mechanism that these those mining algorithms use, and they get harder and harder and harder because the more people that join the network, a good example here, just to bring it back to basics, is you could have mined Bitcoin on your laptop in 2010, but now to reach that same level of profitability, you would need probably 2 or 3 data centers worth of specialist ASIC devices.
It really has a lot. And obviously that's huge, obviously, and we're seeing a lot of those data center companies now moving into HPC as well and diversifying their portfolio. So
it's because every 4 years in Bitcoin world is an event called the halving, where the protocol itself it pays out half the amount that it did the previous 4 years, every 10-minute block reward. So, it means that instantly overnight, essentially, for that farm, unless the price goes up massively, then they've their profits have been halved, or the revenue's been halved as well. Whereas AI is it's almost like a doubling every 2 weeks.
That's the thing, isn't it?
So you can see why these mining farms have gone, hang on a minute.
Oh, they're going mental.
They're really good at running operations. They need to upgrade the facilities in a lot of cases because, running mining workloads and running real customer workloads is a very different scenario, uptime and et cetera. But it's essentially they're very good at running operations. So they've got the capital, they've got the risk appetite. Why wouldn't they move into, essentially what they're seeing is the next gold rush? And the good thing about a lot of those types of suppliers is they are the ones that have spearheaded this renewable infrastructure growth, scale in a lot of these zones.
Exactly.
So.
No, indeed. So you started out that way, and then you've obviously broadened out the portfolio and the service offerings as well. So what made that sort of decision? I mean, you talked about it being the volatile market. Was that largely what sort of spurred that on?
So the proof of concept, the CUDO miner, it was called. The idea was we would always swap out the mining algorithms for computing workloads like AI and video rendering and stuff like that. So we detailed this in our kind of white paper back in 2019, I think it was. And that's all public, so you can go sit, go and have a look at that. But and that meant that anyone would be able to pick up parts of video rendering workloads and stuff on their laptops and desktops, but also mining rigs and in the data center and stuff. When we started to develop that next bit, so we called it CUDO Compute. From a technology point of view, we've done quite a bit of that kind of initial engine building and. But now we're starting to build a pipeline, right? So the business pipeline, we're testing the market. Who needs this? Does this work for you? Just normal kind of product research and finding that market fit. And it's like 99% people still need it to be in a data center. Okay, and then all of a sudden, ChatGPT launches, right? 2022. The world changes instantly,
completely overnight.
Yeah. All right. So to put it into context, these servers, an NVIDIA H100 server, which is at the moment it's the current premium, right? So the H200's coming out, but similar type of cost. They're somewhere between kind of $250,000 to $300,000 per server, and it gives you 8 GPUs in there. Now, that might be fine for a customer coming in that wants to kind of rent maybe all 8 of those GPUs for 2 weeks or a month or something like that to test. But the actual cluster sizes that you're seeing out there, you get the small clusters, which are kind of, 16 to 128 GPUs. And the reason why people want these machines is because their memory can be all federated together, essentially. So you're essentially building a big collective brain by networking all of these servers together. But the bigger clusters out there are thousands, 2,000s, 4,000s, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that in a bedroom.
You really can't.
You can't. It has to be in a data center. It's the only place, only type of environment, building, security, cooling, that would be able to support those. And so full circle, we've gone back into data centers now, whoa, bang, and scaling. So we kind of, we doubled down. We've gone, right, we're just going to refocus. We'd love to come back to that vision of connecting, any connected device essentially, and creating that kind of customer choice. But right now we have to make a decision on where we focus. And that was on those kind of service provider environments. And
so you've gone down the sort of co-location route then, I presume.
So it's more so. I mean, our product is the software.
It's
right?
the software.
So our product is the software. We work with lots of partners around the world that have these machines in place. They have these facilities in place, and so our software is providing the ability to be able to build these machines. But we have partners in the background that provide that supply into the network. We have the ability to be able to do it ourselves. Obviously, we've got the experience. We've been doing it for 20 plus years. And we do have our first kind of owned hardware environment that's gone live in Norway.
Okay.
Which is great. So today.
Today,
or a long time ago, depending on when you listen to us. But the idea for us now is really it's kind of right. We've come out with the infrastructure as a service. What does the AI market need? What does the developer need? What's that ML ops engineer require? What tooling does he need? What models need to be there, accessible, that can download and crack on in the quickest possible way and make it the most efficient? So it's now really about, right, let's get these value layers in. Let's make it even easier for people to be up and running and essentially accelerate their project time.
And I think obviously that's going to be the continued question that you ask yourself, over the next few months, the next year, 2 years, because it's going to constantly evolve. And I'm going to ask
evolves
that
on a
question.
weekly basis, but anyway, carry on.
And I'm going to ask you a question at the end of where you think it's going and where you think the risks are, maybe. But taking that back, obviously you guys are 6 years old now, I think, roughly. I think we're about 6.
Yes. I think I missed the party. Yeah, I might have to have a word about that.
You should have a chat with them. So you can invite me if you like. But obviously, look, it's been a brilliant journey so far. You've diversified your portfolio. You've got a really good business model, as you say, going on that's exciting. It wouldn't have been always smooth.
No.
And I'm sure there would have been some hairy moments.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back now at some of the decisions you made and sort of also like maybe some pinnacle moments, what sort of really sort of shaped you for the success that you found so far?
Mistakes.
Yeah.
Failure.
No.
A lot of people talk about it,
exactly
Mark
that.
Zuckerberg talks about it. Bill Gates talks about it. We're not the first. Building a startup is not an easy. It's a very rewarding task.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It's energetic. You've got to be up for the pace. You have to be up for the kind of knockdowns, and you've got to celebrate the small wins and stuff like that, and to kind of really build that kind of culture around it. It's very, very important because you all pull each other through at those times. But naturally, as a startup, the most important thing is finding the market fit and the product fit, and that's not the first thing that you come up with. You have to get out, in our case, software, right? So you have to get out an alpha version of that software and then be prepared to get some very real feedback on that, right? You should really be looking back at it and thinking, well, that was kind of embarrassing, but you have to kind of have to put it out there to kind of get that feedback and build it.
It's quite a vulnerable thing, isn't it? Really,
it's a vulnerable thing, and for us as well, we're because we're completely insane. We decided to kind of build a blockchain as well, and because we wanted to make sure that any cloud computing platform that we were essentially building or ecosystem that we're building was also accessible to Web3 users, because that's where there's growth, right? Significant growth as we're in that transition across to the next stage of the web. So when you build a blockchain, you have to build a community as well. So now you're even more exposed because you're an early stage startup, but you're almost like a PLC in the fact that you've got a community that can vote on things, they can speak on things, and it's there. It's on Telegram, it's on Twitter for you to see. But so it's very rewarding. You build up a loyal base there as well. They accept that you're a startup and making mistakes, but as a team, you really have to be able to adapt quickly. You have to be willing to pivot. Any startup there says that they got through to a huge company that IPO'd without pivoting is just completely lying.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? Literally got it straight away.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's still, focus is the big thing. Yeah, right. Focus is the big thing because, especially in the tech industry, there's so many shiny things out there. And, it's like a kind of magpie vision. It's like, oh, actually, that's the trend now. Maybe we should do that, because, and you can be taken down quite a few false paths because, yes, there's this kind of interest there, and you maybe you change the narrative, or maybe you do actually add a feature in and maybe just need to kind of take a step back and take a breath and just do a little bit more kind of research on that, or just see how the market's moving. And you either have a choice, you be the first mover, or you can sit back and actually say, I don't need to be the first mover. I'm just going to be the best mover. Yep. If I need to move, kind of thing, right? So So yeah, focus is a huge thing. We definitely spread ourselves too thin at different points, and we've had to.
It happens.
Absolutely, and we've had to consolidate that back, and I feel like we've got the right formula now, and we've learned each stage of the way, and we bring in more experience into the team. You know, other entrepreneurs or CIOs, CSOs that have worked for big corporates, other companies, and they've had that experience themselves as well. They've learned a lot, and they can come through and offer a lot to the team. And you grow up and you grow up. But does it mean we're not going to make a single mistake going forwards?
And that's really important, though, isn't it? Because obviously you've got a core nucleus, but you have brought in some real good expertise as advisors. Because obviously, you're all willing to still learn. And I think that's quite interesting because a lot of businesses I see, I've been working a lot within the startup ecosystem. And some of those CEOs, they are very focused, they're very tunnel visioned, but they're not really willing to listen to another point of view. And they kind of go down with the ship sometimes. And combine it with that, you often do see them take quite a lot of fancy to shiny things. So I've worked with a few businesses now where the shiny things are, it changes all the time. And somebody's a new favorite or this product's a new thing, and it's just not clear at all what they're doing. And I think the fact that you managed to keep that focus whilst taking in good advice from advisors, that's probably one of the core things, surely, that is actually helping get you where you are today.
Yeah, I think so. I think the team that's in place has always been very open-minded, coachable as well. I'm mentored, but I feel like I mentor others as well, and that kind of ripples throughout the whole business. And that mentorship,
is that within the business, or do you use that externally?
Yeah, both. Yeah, both. Yeah. So we surrounded ourselves with good advisors, and we have good investors as well that have come on, joined us on this journey. Even yourself, and I'd take mentorship from absolutely anyone. From my mum, from my dad. It doesn't really matter. It's sometimes you just need someone to say something that is different to what's going on in your head at that moment, and you go, "Yeah, you're right, actually." Thanks for that.
It's the only way. I mean, look, we're similar. Obviously, smaller business. We're 2 years old, right? So we are considerably earlier in the journey that you guys are in at the moment. And it is literally being open-minded enough to learn constantly.
You have to
be that focus and resilient as well, because I think it is stressful.
I think one thing I will say is that we had a vision at the beginning to provide a sustainable, distributed cloud computing platform. And whilst we've pivoted along the way in terms of maybe the audience or maybe the narrative or maybe this feature, that is still the vision, and that is absolutely still what we have built and what we will continue building. So naturally other things evolve as the market, as the technology, as the scene changes. AI was in our white paper, but generative AI wasn't even a term. Right? Maybe it was in some science labs in Silicon Valley.
Not in your office,
but it certainly wasn't in the in our office.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, again, talking about advancements all the time, right? It literally just completely changes, and everyone's just in awe and shocked at what changes and new advancements are happening. And you've got to keep up with that. And you've got to be versatile and nimble to be able to cope with those things as well. I mean, obviously, sustainability is a big part of what you've done, and is almost at forefront, a part of the values and actually how you started. And I guess that's part of your slide deck and your pitch when you're speaking to customers and partners.
It is. It's I mean, we're so sustainably focused. I walked here today from Bournemouth. I didn't really.
That's why you were late.
I did get the train though, so public transport. So to a group of customers, sustainability is very, very important, right? So particularly enterprise. SDG goals, so sustainability development goals, ESG. Environmental sustainability goals. Is that okay? Or social governance, environmental social governance. There's certain industries where they have to prove. So there's regulations like Scope 3. If you're familiar with that, so particularly within the media industry, they have to report on their suppliers' carbon footprint.
Oh, really?
So you can imagine in the data center space, that's really important, right? Because their supplier is the data center, so that data center has to prove to them via certificate. What their carbon footprint is, how they're powered, and stuff like this. That's going to become more and more and more and more important. So within the enterprise space, this is already there. And I think you have to be over a certain size company, which just means that barrier will keep coming down. And eventually it will be all companies have to do that. In other industries, it's not quite there yet. So, in a kind of AI service provider startup, there really isn't that kind of regulatory board out there that is saying that you have to do it in this way so far. It's not a mature industry in that sense yet. It will come, but it's not there yet. And so, like I said earlier, it's a bit kind of just grab what you can get for some of those companies. It's just good that what they are grabbing is already kind of, on that road or already there with being kind of renewably powered, because of the cost of renewables being cheaper in a lot of these locations, because of these the nature of those AI workloads not necessarily needing to be nearer to these big cities, as I mentioned, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of it's pseudo happening, if you like, without necessarily there being the demand from that customer. So we just want to do it right from the beginning. It doesn't tick everyone's box in terms of it's the main driver for them, but it will become. It will be.
It's a consideration, all very important, isn't it? Exactly that. Yeah. So obviously, that's got you there. Then what would you say sort of some of the other USPs you've got compared to other organisations that you may well be competing against?
Yeah.
How do you sort of separate yourselves?
Yeah, I think our model of creating a marketplace is different to a lot of companies out there within our kind of competitor space. If you look at kind of the competitive landscape right now for AI computing power, you've got the hyperscalers, the AWS and Azures, and they're at the premium end, and they're very much targeting the kind of enterprise customers. And then you have kind of your CoreWeave, Lambda Labs are probably the kind of next two down. And they're very, very focused on GPU accelerated computing, right? So whereas those hyperscalers are still general computing, they've got GPUs, but they've also got lots of, kind of CPU computing for, traditional type workloads. CoreWeave, Lambda Labs were those kind of first real GPU focused niche type providers. And then you've kind of got this kind of band down from that. Now they all own their own infrastructure. Yep. And they've got a lot of infrastructure, don't get me wrong, right? But they all own their own infrastructure. So they're limited by their own capacity. Yep. So what we wanted to do was first launch a marketplace, because that allows us to kind of aggregate lots of service provider environments from around the world. So in theory, you don't have those same limitations on availability. And that is one of the key drivers in the market at the moment, because there's such a high demand for this type of computing, and a short amount of supply in balance to that, which is going to get tougher, because now even if that supply is available, there's no data centers or electricity left. So our model, being able to aggregate all of that, kind of solves a big problem there. So I would say that's a kind of good USP.
It's huge, really, isn't it? Like you say.
And we're not the only marketplace out there, but what we are transforming into is one of, if not the only marketplace out there that also has the ability to be able to run these private environments if need be. So if we can't go out and get, if we can't find a cluster of 1,000 H100s in the same building from one of our partners because they've sold out of all their capacity or they've pre-sold it for whatever reason, then we have that flexibility. We can put it in ourselves, and we can offer that through the marketplace, and so on and so forth. So, and the good news that is that if a customer is renting that from us and they've got underutilization because actually they've over-egged what they need, or their project is finished and they've got 3 months until the next project starts, they can sell it for our marketplace, so they can get an ROI from that. So we just create this kind of
it's a two-pronged attack, isn't it? It's great. Yeah. And I think, you're right, because obviously you've got the CoreWeaves, you've got the Lambdas, you've now got the second wave. Yeah. There's quite a big gap between those. And obviously I think the challenge is there is a lot of it is down to, it can be funding, it can be actually availability, whether it would be getting data center space, whether it be actually getting hold of the GPUs in the first instance as well. The fact that you've gone through both is just giving you that sort of, again, sustainable business model. Yeah. So it's fascinating that you've done it that way.
Yeah, it's worked really well, and it means that we have the, if we look at the who's our target audience, it probably comes as no surprise to you, but we're kind of going back to that channel model, right? Because we've created an API, and that API represents every single feature that's on the platform through that API, which means that now other marketplaces or managed service providers can integrate to that API, and they can use that resource as their own or present that resource as their own to their customer base. And so it's just really, really kind of well set up to kind of expand or scale our business again through that kind of channel model.
So I was going to say, because that lends me to the next question about your plans for the future for you and for the business. So I guess part of that is the channel model moving forward. But anything else sort of happening on the horizons at the moment?
Yes, there is. Yeah, there's plenty. There's always plenty. So everything we do is very much focused on compute.
Yeah.
Like I said, we've learned from having 2 or 3 things.
Yeah.
Maybe even 4 or 5 things at times.
You've now got that focus.
And it's kind of like, boom, let's bring it in even further. So the latest thing we're proposing, but again, by the time everyone listens to this, it may have gone through, it may not. But on the blockchain side of our business, first of all, the kind of the reason why we had a blockchain, like I say, was to provide access to the Web3 developers, right? And whilst they can absolutely go onto an AWS or an Azure and they can access computing power in that way, it kind of goes against the exact philosophy of decentralization. And so, there's been this whole kind of movement of decentralized compute that's kind of, started back in kind of 2016. And it's kind of been evolving, and it's a very complex thing to build. So, from a developer in that ecosystem, they want to be able to connect a wallet. They want to be able to pay in a cryptocurrency, whether that's a stable coin or whether that's a coin that is native to the ecosystem that they're building with, applications for there. So we built a blockchain to be able to give access in that way, right? So in a very native way. Because of this explosion of AI, and that's rapidly being evolved into the kind of blockchain space as well. And I'll come back to that in a second if I remember the point, but you can always remind me.
I'll remind you.
Is that we have been invited to join an alliance. So there are 3 companies that formed what's called the Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, which sounds very megalomaniac, doesn't it? It's essentially they're building services and tooling for AI developers. We're being invited in as the infrastructure. So if you look at kind of vertically integrated technology stack for AI in blockchain space, that's the ASI Alliance, and we've been invited into that. So the vote goes live today, as of Thursday, the 19th of September, 2024. And the community has the ability to vote on that, and providing it's successful, it means that it's only the token, it's not our businesses, but the token merges, we become this kind of ASI super token, if you like. But more importantly to that, it means that we're now part of this ecosystem with a much, much, much wider pool of developers that all need computing power. And they want that done in a kind of as close to a decentralized way as possible, which is exactly what our network is. We've distributed that across the world, across different vendors, across different locations and stuff.
And fingers crossed that all goes to plan, and you get the outcome that you're looking for, and you'll be celebrating with some champagne, I'm sure. What does that mean for the business then, in terms of how you scale, how you prepare, how you equip yourself to make sure you basically I think
there's kind of 2 areas to this. So one of them I've kind of touched on, which is it's just a really, really big pool of developers out there. It's much more awareness because it's kind of like a super group, if you like. And that comes with its kind of own benefits, and you want to create that kind of flywheel there, and strengthen the pack rather than the sum of all parts. Is kind of I put 2 sayings together there because I always mess up the one saying.
It works.
But you get what I'm saying. Is that what was I going with this? It gives us the opportunity to actually compete with these bigger cloud providers, with these hyperscalers, but still keep it in a kind of a decentralized manner. So I think that's kind of that's one huge advantage. The other advantage for us as an internal one is because that means that we don't have to manage a blockchain anymore.
Yep.
We have a much bigger marketing team as part of this alliance.
Okay.
So we get resource back. We get internal resource back, and in particular, we get engineering resource. So those that were, focused on maintaining, upgrading, supporting the blockchain won't have to do that now. So we can have them come back into the compute engineering team and accelerate on that front. So there's probably 10 to 20 different benefits, but I'll keep it.
You've got those
two.
benefits. You've got that alliance. You've then going down the channel route for the compute business as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, bringing that resource in to help grow and scale that and provide that sort of service. So obviously, the future AI. We talked about AI is changing all the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, the way you're set up as a business, what do you think the opportunities are over the next sort of year or two? Because it's changed so much over the last year. Any major ones you think, or is it more about being nimble to adapt?
I'm going to give you some insight, but that insight, just to caveat this, is not from me. But obviously, I'm seeing this happening in the market. But this is Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA. This is some of our on the blockchain side of things. This is coming from some of our kind of backers and funds that are analysing the market all the time and seeing where trends are and what's happening and. Researchers, basically, what I'm saying is, and it's not the sales guy that's come up with this, but I think it's really important to kind of share the kind of insight is that within the kind of next 5 to 6 years, maybe even sooner, because the way things are accelerating. Jensen Huang actually said in a recent podcast or recent interview that. This is the first time in history within the computing age that we're now accelerating past Moore's law. We're actually closer to Moore's law squared.
Okay.
Right. So all the keen mathematicians out there can very quickly go, wow, it's so this rate of evolution is exascaling. And it's because AI is training it. It's got the ability to train AI now, right? So
that's just it, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
So, that's where we are. So if you kind of look out 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, this has already started. The predominant user on the internet is not going to be a human. It's going to be an AI agent.
Yep.
Everyone's going to have, like on your smartphone at the moment, you might have, 100 apps on there. Maybe in 5 years, you're going to have 10 agents.
Yeah.
And they'll do everything for you, right? So I've got, a booking agent, or I've got a finance agent, whatever it's going to be. And you say, whether it's via your watch, or maybe you've got something embedded in your lip by that point, I don't know, or if it's in your car, you say, I'm looking for a 4-star villa in Mykonos that's 5-minute walk from the beach and has a hot tub and all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet, and for 4 people, and it will go off and it will come back, and it will say, "We've got these options. Would you like me to book it for you?" And you say, "Yes, please." And it's already connected to your wallet from the open banking system or from the crypto system ecosystem, and it books it, and then it reminds you, it puts it in your diary already. That's the way the internet is going, right? So you can see now why. There's a lot that's kind of transitioned into blockchain because if you're going to automate things in that way, the blockchain is a great place to record those things, and make it kind of more efficient. So everything is kind of coming together. I think blockchain really needed AI. I think AI really needed that kind of ChatGPT launch. And what we've seen over the last 2 years is this explosion, and we really, really are at the very beginning of that. So AI agents is kind of where I see the
we don't have to go into details on that, but that kind of thing, if you've got people, financial advisors, AI advice, is that removing the need for, financial special? I've got a financial advisor. Do I need that person anymore?
Do you know, it's a really interesting question, right? Because it always comes up whenever there's a new technology that automates something. We're talking to a startup at the moment that's creating autonomous robots for warehouses. So you can imagine an Amazon warehouse with just robots walking around. They don't there's no health benefits, there's no dental care or anything like that. Okay, you have to lube them up every now and then.
That's about it.
Not in that way.
Bit of WD-40.
But it's very cool.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you instantly think, oh, okay, well, yeah, what about humans? What are they going to do for work? You walk in the local Tesco and Sainsbury's, and it's everyone goes to the self-checkout tills now, right? Are the robots going to take our jobs? They're going to take some jobs.
It's balance, isn't it?
They are going to take some jobs. But I think if you look at kind of universities, you can probably say that most of the courses that are taught within a university over the last 5 years, and this refreshes every 5 years, probably didn't exist 5 years ago.
Yeah, true.
So there's always something new. Humans have got a very good knack of creating something.
We're adapting,
right?
we can evolve,
and
yeah.
adapting. These AI agents are assistants. They can make you a lot more efficient. They can do a lot of stuff for you. Maybe that frees up your mind to do something else. So, it's a difficult question because it comes up all the time, and I'm not the only one being asked this, right? This is
it's the question everywhere, isn't it? And
I guess you look at those job figures, and it seemingly the job figures are, well, we've got the highest employment rates ever. It was like, well, what about the robots? What's so yeah, it's
And so how do you think, so with all those changes, so from what Jensen's saying, and it is crazy, and to think what the next 5 years is going to be like, because, if we go back, it wasn't that long ago that I was recruiting EMC storage engineers. Now we're talking about AI developers. We're looking at DevRel specialists. We're doing all these crazy things that we're looking at. So the skill sets have evolved. People have changed in terms of what they're experts in now. And obviously that's great. But the businesses are adapting. That's why the skill sets and the demands change and the needs. So how are you going to remain relevant, current? And is that, you don't actually have to know where that is now. I think that's the beauty of it. So it's just being flexible, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's again, it's really just seeing what the customer actually needs. Right? As long as you put yourself, Jeff Bezos is the biggest proponent of this. If you always think customer first, then your business will continue to succeed. Right? It's when you start thinking internally first, that's when it kind of fails. Because there's 40 of us in the company right now against a potential industry of hundreds of thousands of people. I would like to say those hundreds of thousands of people collectively are probably going to be more correct than the 40 of us internally.
Yep, true.
Right?
I think that's fair.
Run a Monte Carlo simulation across a big enough data set, right? And it's you're going to see that. So what do they need, right? Okay, so Meta has just come out with Llama 3.1 or something, right? It's the new foundational model. Okay, so what are the tools that are required now to really help AI developers with Llama 3.1? Are they different to Llama 3? NVIDIA, they're bringing out these what's called NIMs, so these microservices.
Yeah.
Okay, and these microservices, there'll be ones for biotech, there'll be ones for robotics, ones for autonomous vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so what else do we need in place to support those NIMs? Because if that is making it easier for for developers to build their projects, then we need to make sure that we've got the building blocks underneath it to be able to support those, because that's the way the market's going to go, right? Efficiency usually is the thing that drives change.
Absolutely.
So it's constant, and this is the beautiful thing about the technology industry, is there is never a quiet moment.
It really
and especially when that curve, like I said earlier, was doing that, and now it's doing that.
Yeah.
It's like you're on a daily basis. You're just from a company point of view, we tend to go back to basics periodically. So be it that maybe every 6 months or so, it's like, right, let's come back. Let's have a look at our different work streams across the business. What are we doing on the product side, sales side? Do we need to come back to basics on this? Have we got this bit right? Are we seeing success in this area? And it's really just having that discipline to be able to do that, to accept that, all right, I might be a little bit over my skis. Let's come back a little bit and reassess the market. So.
Okay, and before we finish up, so just, obviously part of this is, we call it the Humans in AI podcast, and it's all about people, really building startups and scale-ups and what have you, and really following similar paths to what you guys have just done. And often it's quite a lonely place. In some cases, the CEO is an engineer, hasn't got much business sort of experience, stuff like that. So, and they don't necessarily always have mentors. So, just advice to people that are in that startup world, grinding, it's hard. What sort of advice would you give to people that maybe a few years earlier in their journey to where you guys are?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, right? Because I feel like we probably all make the same same mistakes. It's out of a kind of passion, right?
Yeah.
Because it's particularly if you're part of the founding team, and it's you feel indebted to your customers, to yourselves, to the rest of the team, that you really want to kind of drive this forward and make it a success. And sometimes that, like you said, it can bring that into a bit of a lonely place. So I think you really have to have trust in your team, right? You brought them on in the first place for a reason, right? Because you believe they could do the job and they could do the job very well. And particularly in this industry, people are smart. There's a lot of really, really, kind of high levels of intelligence, not just across kind of development and product, but all kind of areas, because this is a very, very technical sector of industry. So everyone has that ability to step up a gear as well. So you have to have the kind of faith, they have to have the trust that you can delegate that, and with the right kind of mentoring and coaching, they become very self-sufficient in that. And in fact, they don't just become self-sufficient, they find their own way to do it. They find their way that it becomes, even more efficient than maybe you were kind of setting out in the first place. And that takes don't get me wrong, if you delegate 10%, you're going to fill it up with another 10%, right? So, but you'll reach your goals a lot faster if you work as a team and build that culture to thrive and fail as a team, and to pick each other up. You'll achieve your goals a lot faster that way than if you go off and try and do it as an individual and silo, or take on too much. It's better if I actually do that job, because I'll get it done quicker. Long term, it's always better to kind of.
You're right. I mean, that culture, because you are a founder, so you do naturally feel different about it. And those employees, it's not necessarily just a job. You don't want somebody who just looks at it as a job, but they are going to feel different. So it is about taking them on that journey and getting that buy-in. And like I say, you're only as strong as the good people that you put around you, I guess.
Yeah, I know there are ways of, having, for us as a company, every single person in the business has options in the business, right? So, and also because we've got the token, so everyone has tokens as well. So it's that's a really good way of making people feel like they've got skin in the game. Not making them feel like they have got skin in the game. Right? So they have got skin in the game, and I think it's and then it comes down to communication. Because particularly now, because most of us work remote, right?
You're fully remote, aren't you?
We're fully remote. We've got co-working spaces that we can go into, and we've got meetings. Or if I'm up in London today with you guys, and I can jump into one that's about half a mile down the road. Really, really handy. But we don't have a fixed office anymore. We gave it up at the beginning of COVID. But we've got Slack, and the developers spend their time all in a kind of Slack open room the whole day, and we're constantly on Zooms and Google Meets and Microsoft Teams, and that's the world we live in now. But you do kind of, the point is you can lose that team feeling very quickly if you isolate yourself in that world. So it's very important to communicate on everything. I think there's, whether something's happened or something that hasn't happened, communicate it, because it just ties everyone together. Then
it's a huge risk, and is obviously a key thing to mitigate that. Do you do much in terms of actually getting everybody? Because I know you've got these virtual these WeWork type sites. Do you do full sort of team meets, or? Yeah, we
do. So Christmas is mandatory.
Yeah, of course.
And we get as many people there as possible. We actually have some staff overseas, so it's we try to get them over as well. We can never get 100% attendance because Christmas and people get busy as well. But we try our best. We try to have a kind of summer get together. as well. And there's other opportunities throughout the year. And, I know the development team get together quite often for lunch and so on and so forth. But this is the other thing, because the startup only gets busier, right? It doesn't get quieter. And I think, arguably in the last kind of year or two, we haven't done that enough. Mm-hmm. So if there's one thing one thing I would change, it would certainly be to get us all together on a more frequent basis.
Not quite as strict as AWS of 5 days in the office.
No, and go do fun stuff. I mean, look at what NVIDIA do. Jensen gives them a what's called NVIDIA Day every quarter for mindfulness, right? Mm-hmm. And to rest. It's either 1 day or 2 days, maybe 2 days. So they get an extra 2 days or an extra 8 days of kind of holiday per mm-hmm. year. And within that, he encourages, to go off, nobody across the whole business is allowed to answer an email mm-hmm. or answer the phone. It's banned. Wow. It's banned.
Oh, right? Incredible.
Yeah. So those rules are coming right from the top. Everything's off completely. Doesn't matter.
That says a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And look how quickly they've grown and what they've become. And, it's all about building that culture where everyone feels got skin in the game. The leadership team are really looking after me as well, and everyone around me is looking after me, and just feeling part of that kind of that family.
That's incredible. So in summary then, what I take from this and learning about you and your business, the way you guys have geared yourself up for success is clear focus, being able to pivot, and then actually creating a culture where everyone feels like they're part of the organisation and actually got skin in the game and bought into it. That's how you've shaped yourself so far.
Yeah, exactly that.
That's a pretty good way to end it.
Yeah, I think so.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Brilliant. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation today. I thought Pete gave us a great insight into his journey, his business, and what it's been like to co-found CUDO. Next week, I've got a fantastic conversation with Carl Havard, the COO of the new startup and quickly moving scale up, N-Scale. So see you there. Don't forget to subscribe where you listen to your podcast, and make sure you follow Asobi on LinkedIn so you don't miss a thing. Until next week, see you then.